Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created with Phaser 3. So in our last video, we started setting up our main battle scene and laying out where we want our game objects to be positioned, and we update our game configuration. We finished off by placing our enemy and player monster game objects, and so in the next thing we need to do is actually add in our UI components for like our health, our battle menu, and allowing the player to select attacks. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the description of this video that contain the source code up to this point and the completed source code. There'll also be links on your screen to those videos if you want to catch up. So let's get started. All right, so to get started, we're going to go ahead and work on creating our player enemy health bar components. So in our game, we're going to create a health bar component that has a simple UI background like this. And we're going to add things in like the monster's name, the level, the HP. And then for our monster, we'll go ahead and add in the numerical values of our current HP and then the max HP. And so to do this, we're going to use a phaser game object called a container. And what this game object does is it allows you to place other game objects inside it. And then when you move the container, it's going to move all of the objects that are actually in that container. And so it's a nice way to develop our game components in isolation, because then we can position all those elements in one go. And this will be really nice once we see it in the code, because we won't have to manually specify our X and Y values for things like our health bar, our text here, and things of that nature. It's also really nice because it allows you to do things like hide everything at once that's inside that container. So to do this, what we'll do is we'll come back to our battle scene class, and at the bottom of our create method, what we'll do is we're going to create our player health bar component. And so to do this, let's add our new container game object first. We're going to do this.add.container. And so like our other game objects, we specify our X and Y value of where we like our game object to be placed. So we're going to go ahead and do 556 for our X value, then 318 for our Y value. And then you have the option to go ahead and provide game objects that you'd like to be added to your container when it's instantiated. So by default, you don't have to provide any game objects, but you can provide those as an array. So for the time being, I'm going to provide an empty array, and we'll go ahead and add in our objects here in a second. So if we go ahead and save, nothing changes in our game scene, and that's to be expected because our container is just an empty game object that does not render anything out. It will only render out any of the game objects that are added inside it. So for the first game object, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add in our monster's name. So what we'll do is we'll make a new variable. We're going to call it player monster name. And we're going to go ahead and create a text game object. So we'll go ahead and provide our properties to the method, and then we'll come back and review what we did. So we'll do this.add.text, and we'll go ahead and provide 30 for our X value, 20 for our Y value, and we'll do monster asset keys, and we're going to reference iguana ignite. All right, so if we go ahead and save and refresh, our scene will show our new text game object, and we'll see the text iguana ignite. And so how text game objects work are they work similar to our other game objects where we provide our X and Y value. But one key difference is for our X and Y value, usually when we display our game object, we saw that the origin was in the middle of the game object. For text game objects, the origin is always in the top left-hand corner. So that's why when we did the position 3020, we can see our I starts at that position. For the next argument we provide to our text method is the actual text string that we want to render out. So by providing the text iguana ignite, that's why that's rendered to our screen here. One other option we have is we can provide custom styling that we want to apply to our text game object. So if you don't provide any options, Phaser, the framework, has its own built-in defaults it'll apply. So it uses Courier for our font family, 16 pixels for the size of this font, and then it'll use a font color of white, as we can see here. And so if we want to provide our own styling, we can do that when we create our text game object or by using a method to modify these values after it's created. So inside our method, what we'll do is we'll provide our own color. So we're going to do color, and then we can provide our color that we want to apply. So we're going to do 7E3D3F. And then what we'll do is if we go ahead and save, we'll see our text is now updated into like this reddish color here. And so we can't really see it here, but once we add it to our container with our background, it'll really pop. And so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to make our text a little bit bigger, and we're going to do that by doing font size, and we will specify 32 pixels. There we go, much better. All right, so then what we're going to do is now we have our text game object, but we want our player text game object to be down here in our container. So what we'll do is we're going to specify our game object. We're going to add it into our container when we create our container here. And so now you can see our text is down here instead of at the position 3020. And so what happens is when you add your game objects to your container, they will be positioned relative to the top left corner of your container. So if you picture, our top left corner will be 0, 0. So then we come down to 3020 inside our container. So it's one thing to keep in mind when you position your elements. All right, so then next what we'll do is we'll add in our background element so we can actually see our text. So to do that, we'll come inside our container. And what we'll do is before we add in our player monster name, we'll go ahead and add a new image game object. So we're going to do this.add.image, and we will do 0, 0. We'll do our battle asset keys, and we're going to do our health bar background. And then what we'll do is we're just going to modify our origin. So then that way we're in our top left-hand corner. All right, so next we're going to go ahead and add in our health bar component here. And so our health bar component is going to be made up of 3 separate images. We're going to have the left end, the right end, and then we'll have the middle piece. And our middle piece is going to stretch depending on how big we want our health bar to actually be. So if we come back to our game, if we pop open our assets folder under Kenny's Assets UI Space Expansion, you'll see we have 3 different images for our health bar. So this is our left end, our right end, and then this will be the piece that we need to stretch to make that full health bar to create that nice effect here. And so by placing them all in a container, we can go ahead and position these all together within our main container here. All right, so then what we need to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new method. We're going to do a private method. We're going to do create health bar. And so for our health bar, we're going to need an X and Y value for where we want to position this. So we'll have our X and our Y, and this will be the position of the new container that we create. So what we'll do is we'll do return this.add.container, and what we'll do is we'll do our X, we'll do our Y, and we'll provide an empty array for our game objects we want to add, just so we have what we're going to be returning. And then what we'll do is in our main container, we're going to go ahead and call our new method. So we'll do create health, and we're going to do position 34, 34. So the next thing we need to do is we actually need to create our 3 images, our image game objects, and then add them to our container. So what we'll do is we'll make a new variable. We're going to call this left cap, and we'll set this equal to this.add.image, and we're going to do our X and Y value. And then we're going to go ahead and use our health bar asset keys, and we're going to reference the middle cap. Then what we'll do is we'll provide left cap to our container. And then what we need to do is we actually need to create 2 more of these. So we'll have to have our middle and our right cap. So I'm just going to copy this line of code and paste it. And what we'll do is we'll do middle, right cap, and then we'll update our keys. So we will use middle, and we'll use our right cap. And then what we need to do is we just need to actually pass those into our container. So we'll have middle, and we'll have our right cap. All right, so if we go ahead and save and take a look at our scene, we'll see we have our images, but they're overlapping with each other because we didn't modify their position. And so what we actually need to do is we need to base our X position of our middle based on our display width of our left cap. So what we'll do is we're going to do our left cap dot X, so we get the initial position of it. We will add in the width of this game object. So we'll do our left cap dot width, and then this will be the starting value for our middle part of our game object. Then for the right side, we need to do the same thing, but we reference our middle. So we'll go down here. We're going to do our middle dot x plus our middle game object dot width. So now if we take a look at our scene, we'll see that our game objects are starting to come together in positioning, but they're still not quite aligned properly. And the reason for that is due to our initial origin that we're providing for our game object. So what we actually want to do is for our left cap, so we just go ahead and open up our image real quick. What we want to do is right now our origin is in the middle of our game object here. Instead, what we want this to do is we want to go ahead and position this to be in just on the far left here. So we're going to do 0 and then 0.5, so halfway down. So our origin would be in the left middle of our in our image here. And so the reason for that is so then that way when we calculate our width, we're actually getting the full width of our game object here. So if we come back to our code, what we can do is on our left cap, we're going to call that setOrigin method. We're going to specify 0 for x, and then we're going to go ahead and specify 0.5, so then that way we're halfway down. Likewise, we're going to want to do this for our middle game object as well, since we need to calculate the width for since we need to also calculate that for our last piece. So we're going to do setOrigin, we'll do 0, and we'll do 0.5. And then to make it consistent, we're going to do that for our right side as well. All right, so go ahead and save and refresh. If we take a look, we'll see now our health bar component actually looks like a health bar, but it's very small. What we want to do is we actually want to update our health bar to take up most of our main component here. And so to do that, we can update the display width on our middle game object. So what we'll do is before we create our right side, we're going to reference our middle game object, and we're going to use the display width property to go ahead and set the display width for our game object. And so what this will do is it's going to go ahead and stretch our game object based on the value we provide here. So we actually want to do 360. And so we'll see here, now our health bar is actually stretched out. However, our right side game object is rendering at the beginning here. All right, and so what's happening here is when we calculate the position for our right end of our health bar component, when we reference the width property, this is the initial unscaled value of the width of the game object. So when we reference an image, it's the original width versus our display width. This is the scaled actually width of the game object that's being drawn to the canvas element. So for us to position our right side appropriately, we actually need to reference the display width on our middle game object. So we go ahead and update that. Now we can see our health bar component looks how it should. All right, so just a few minor tweaks. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and scale our game object a little bit. So then that way it's a little bit smaller. So to do that, we're just going to make a new variable. We're going to do const. We'll do scale y. We're going to set this to 0.7. And then what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and call the setScale method on our game objects. And we're going to do 1 for our x value. So we won't scale our x, so horizontally, but we are going to scale it vertically just to kind of squish it a little bit. So we're going to reference that variable that we created, so our scale y, and then we just need to call that same method on our two other game objects. So what we'll do, we'll come here, and then we'll come here. Just go ahead and save. Now we have our nice looking health bar component here. All right, so now that we have our health bar, we just need to add a few more text game objects to finish up our component. So we're going to go ahead and render out the text HP next to our health bar, as well as some basic level information. So to do that, what we can do is we'll come back to our create method. When we create our container, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and copy the code here for this add text on our monster player name. We're going to copy that. We'll come into our container, and then what we'll do is let's add in our level information first. So let's go ahead and paste that. we're going to go ahead and update our positioning. So for our level text, that needs to be based on our enemy monster name here. So then that way we can position it after the text. Because as you imagine, each of our monsters will have different names, different nicknames. And so the level information will be have a different position depending on how long this text string is. So to do that, similar to what we did for our health bar component, what we'll do is we'll do our player monster name, and we're going to do the width property on it. And then what we'll do is we're just going to add a little bit of spacing. So we're just going to add 35. Then for our positioning, we're just going to do 23. And then for our text, what we're going to do is we're just going to hard code a level for the time being. So we're just going to do L5 for level 5. And then for our color, we're just going to change this a little bit. We're going to do ED 47 4B. And we'll make it a little bit smaller. So we're going to do 28 pixels. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and save. All right, and now we have our level. All right, so then next for our HP text, what we're going to do is copy this. We'll paste it down here. For our positioning, we're going to go ahead and do 30 for our X value, 55 for our Y value. For our text, it'll just be HP. And then for our color, what we'll do is we'll do FF 6505. And we will go ahead and do 24 pixels. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add an additional styling to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it italic. All right, so go ahead and save. We'll see now we have the text HP next to our health bar here. All right, so for the last piece, what we need to do is on our player, we're going to go ahead and add in the text here for our current HP and our max HP. So we're just going to go ahead and hard code those values for the time being. So what we'll do is we'll copy this. Let's go ahead and change our text. We'll do 25 divided by 25. For our positioning, we're going to do 443 for our X, and we will do 80 for our Y. For our color, we'll go ahead and change this to 7E3 D3F. Then we're just going to go ahead and bump this down. We want it to be a little bit smaller than our other components, so we're just going to do 16 pixels, and we won't do our font style. All right, so what we're actually going to do is we're going to update the origin for our game objects. So the origin for our text will be on the right-hand side instead of the top left-hand corner. Then that way it'll be positioned where we want it to be. So we'll do set origin, and we're going to do 1 for the X value and 0 for the Y. So that's going to be in the top right-hand corner, which will position our text at the bottom of our bar here. And so the reason we're doing that is because as our monsters get stronger, you can imagine these digits are going to change. There might be 3 digits. And so this text game object will always want to position it so the first digit here will always be aligned with our bar here. So if we always did it from the left, we'd constantly have to update our position as these values change. This will allow us so no matter what this string is, it'll be aligned here. All right, so next what we need to do is we actually need to recreate this component for our enemy. So what we're going to do for the time being is we're going to copy our code that we just added, basically lines 26 all the way down to 57, and we're going to paste it down here. So later on, we're going to refactor this, so then that way we're not duplicating our code like this, but we just want to get our initial layout done. So what we're going to do is we're going to render out the enemy health bar. We're going to update our variable here. So we'll have enemy monster name. We're going to change this to Carno Dusk. Then what we're going to do is inside our container, we're going to do position 0, 0. And then what we need to do is, instead of referencing player monster name, we're going to do enemy monster name, and we'll go ahead and save. And so, as you can see here, because we used a container, all we had to do was update the initial position for our container here, and all of our other game objects were positioned correctly because they're based on the relative position inside our container. So as you can see, this was a really nice benefit because we easily recreated our component without having to move all of these objects inside it around. We just modified a few text settings in the initial position. So a few things we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the numerical value for HP from our monster component here. So we're going to go ahead and remove this game object. Then what we're going to do is we're going to shrink our component a little bit. Because we're not displaying that text here, we don't need to be as large. And so to do that, what we're going to do is on our background image here, we're going to go ahead and just scale it down a little bit. So if we come to our health bar background, after we call set origin, we're going to do set scale. And what we'll do is we're just going to do 1, so we won't modify the horizontal scaling. We're just going to shrink it, so we'll do 0.8. Perfect. All right, and with that, that brings this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our UI by adding in our menu for our battle scene here. So by rendering out the options and what the attacks the player can do. As a reminder, there'll be a link to the completed source code in the description of the video. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, please consider liking the video and leaving a comment. Also, to be notified when the next video is released for this series, please make sure you click the bell icon. For more great Phaser 3 content, please check out some of the links on your screen now.